Welcome to Digital Accessory Insights. My name is Eugene and I'm the CEO of Venngage. Today we have Bob Moran from Accessibility Shield with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Eugene. I appreciate you offering us to come on here.
No, thanks for dropping by. First question's always the same. Can you share your origin story of how you got into digital accessibility and maybe a little bit about the founding of Accessibility Shield?
Okay, well, I'll start with the founding of the company and then how I joined. So our company it's really an offshoot of a development company. Okay, so we were looking at we were looking to sell a product which would crawl websites to check out websites on a marketing perspective for changes on, so you could check your competition about things that they've done recently. And as we were developing this for a client, we were taking this to test, and we were at a exposition, and lo and behold, next to us was a digital accessibility company founded by a blind gentleman up in New York. And as we were talking with them, they asked us, says, "Hey, they found out more during the course of the day. You're there for 8 hours, right?
Right,
So,
right.
As you're talking at, between coffee and lunch and things, and they said, that's interesting that your site can crawl websites. Do you think you could change it so it would crawl and look for inaccessible aspects of a website?" And that intrigued us. So as we got talking further and further, we wanted to look, we decided to take a look at all the history around accessibility. We learned a lot about the WC3, the WCAG violations, all the good stuff that, the heart of this. And even though we had people in our lives that were affected by disability, the extent of the problem wasn't as evident or apparent, and you think about it, so if I've heard anywhere from 20 to 27% of people either have a disability or self-identify with disabilities, right? So if a website is inaccessible, that's a fourth of the population. That's a lot. I mean,
Yep.
think about any person, any table with 4 people. That means one of those people may not be able to see. So as we learned about that, we got more and more interested, and we started really researching and developing a program that would be able to crawl these websites and identify all the components of this website that's not accessible or meet the standards of WCAG. So, so we thought, knowing our talents, the developers' talents, that we could make it better. I called it a better mousetrap, but a better system. So the journey became, what can we do to make make our tool the most efficient and effective tool for auditors and for developers. So, as you may or may not know, or your audience may not, only about 40% of all websites of automated systems can track and catch the issues with a website. You really need to do manual auditing.
Yep.
So we got skilled up in the manual auditing process. We got certified. We did all the due diligence again in that aspect of it, so that our tool, our platform, was not only a way for us to track and capture the automated stuff, but was to track and make it easier for manual testers to keep everything in one place. So if you look at a lot of manual testers, a lot of the companies that are out there today, they do a lot of, especially the smaller ones, they capture things and they put a little, it's like they capture on an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
And then they go back and then it's email and back and forth with the developers, to get it fixed. And so since what would we like to say is our platform is developed by auditors and developers for auditors and developers, so that there's a collaborative effort to make it as most efficient and make it as most efficient and effective as they can for people to make the process simpler,
Right.
make it easier, and make it more cost effective in the end result. So
Yeah, that last point on cost effectiveness, I think, we've had a conversation earlier about how expensive
oh
hiring
yes.
firms can be. Can you talk about how your approach is different, how it's more cost effective than some of these larger accessibility companies out there?
Well, example would be if you have, first of all, if you have, as in any organization or any functions, you have silos, right? You have your auditors, you
Right.
have your developers, and how they communicate with each other becomes a critical aspect of anything. And like in any process, I'll talk a little bit about my history in a second, but in my background, I did a lot of process design work. And so when any process, when you have, the more handoffs you have, the more opportunity for failure you have, because miscommunications, typos, things sitting in inboxes, right? All that stuff just slows down the process, and it provides an opportunity for increased time in development and increased error, and then therefore increased effort, and then increased labor and then cost, right? So that's kind of, so by our platform has its own project management tracking system where auditors, so you have the automated system that gives you the identified scanned issues with a site, and that's captured. And then you have the manual auditors who can track their own issues right on the same platform. So as opposed to it being, we got one thing here to the left, we got one thing here to the right, and we're combining it into a third thing. It's one sheet. It's one platform. You're putting everything into one place, and as you're doing it, you can create synergies between similar things, different pages. What do we see as common, right? But it's all right there.
Right.
So you reduce those opportunities for mishap.
Okay. And that's part of the platform that Accessibility Shield offers, right?
That's really, that's the crux and the heart of what our, because as you and I, in our research and when we're talking, our company is not just a end user company, meaning that you could hire us, any company could hire us,
Right.
and we could do the manual auditing, and we can even do the remediation, right? But we also offer our platform as a service, business to business platform, so that people can use the tool itself to improve their own processes. And then, again, our vision of digital accessibility for all. That way, more people can, with 96% of the websites out there being inaccessible, we just got to do a better job.
Right. Yeah.
We just have to do a better job. I mean, again, think about that table of 4, right? If somebody in that table 96% of the time has no access to something, it would be like going to, if you had somebody in a wheelchair trying to get into a retail outlet and they don't have a wheelchair ramp. You just can't imagine that today. But just think about it, that's what it is. They can't get into that establishment or that business or that service.
That's a good analogy. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the key things that, when we're talking to clients and to our partners, it's trying to get that message across that, our goal, sure, I mean, we're not a nonprofit. I'm not trying to, but our goal really is to make this whole mystique around accessibility much more palatable and manageable for businesses to address. And, for some of us, for digital marketing companies, for compliance companies, for development companies to sell this and do it more efficiently so that there's a room for them to make a profit and there's still room for, to keep the costs down, as opposed to, some of these larger companies are just expensive just to get in the door. And we're trying to break that barrier down so that smaller companies can truly benefit from this and their clients can. And the other side of it is, from a business perspective, I look at it this way. Okay, so I'm a bit, I work, you're in Canada, so there's a company out here called Wawa. That's where I started. So there 36 years when I retired. So I'm a retiree. And I joined the company after a couple of years. For one of the people there, I knew real well, and he asked me to kind of help out, consult. And then before you know it, I'm joined. Right? That's what happened. Like after several weeks, they're like, "Do you want to help us out and work?" And I said, "I'm retired. Sure, I'm not." It's a whole new kind of area for me, but the business is business, and that's why I'm not like I'm not a tech guy. I worked in the tech side of the business, worked in project management offices and things like that. But the idea of this is to help us grow this and make people more aware of the issue itself, and then how we believe our tool is one of the most effective ways to get this to help solve this problem for many people.
Okay. How long has it been since you started Assessment?
29. The journey started in 2017.
Okay.
I joined the company in 2019, and we launched in 2019. So we've been at it now 5 years.
Okay.
And COVID was not a blessing for us, like many companies. It hit us hard in some areas. It slowed us down. It derailed us in some, but we're back. And and again, our goal and our technological improvements since in the past year have made some of our efforts even better and more efficient for developers and auditors in order to identify and fix the issues.
Can you kind of just give us at a high level, how has the landscape evolved, and how has your platform evolved? Since starting.
Since again, you start with, again, to highlight this, the critical thing to note is that, I said this earlier and I'm going to repeat it, is that technology can only do so much. You need the manual audit.
Right.
The manual audit's critical, and so because that really captures everything that that just may not be, that may be masked. And then we'll talk about widgets in a minute too. I've heard some of your podcasts, so I know how you feel about widgets and layers, how those things help distract or not even fix. So from that perspective, our development is to improve, as we've learned, to improve the process of capturing it and tracking it in our project management tool. Having extensions where it can be worked with Jira, which is a development tool, developers tool platform. So again, and our most recent has been, we have a browser extension, which allows people to literally still be on the site and working offsite. And it just, again, you don't have to exit or enter. You know what I mean? You don't have to do a lot of that, what we were talking about, handoffs or going things. By using the browser extensions, you're able to cut and paste and do things in real time. And what used to take 15 steps is maybe 2 or 3 now. So our focus in the past year has really been on trying to improve that technology to make the whole capture and identification and capture of issues is easier and more effective.
A little bit on manual testing. I mean, I think you've touched on it a little bit,
Yeah.
and we have experienced it in ourselves. What is your approach to manual testing, and how do you blend that with, your platform's automated tools?
So, the key things with manual testing are one, our auditors are all certified through the IAAPP, so that
Okay.
International of Accessibility Professional. I don't know the whole thing off the top of my head, sorry. But that is where, so you have people that are certified and really understand all the components of the WCAG law, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, right? And we're currently on 2.1, and it's looking to move forward again. And we do all our work to 2.1, is to understand what those specific issues are, and to take a look and understand the HTML code that's being used, and track what really is affecting a website, either through, contrast, color contrast, right? That may not be captured, that may be difficult to be captured through automation. Navigation is another one, so that not everything is, most people use mouses a lot, but you have to make sure it's the navigation through the navigation bars and through other things. Excuse me, I want to get a sip of water here. And using, arrows up and down. And so our manual testers are, they go through the hierarchy and priority of what are the issues, from the headers and all the way down to the lowest level. And we attack the most egregious issues first, identify those, and then share those with the developers so they can correct them.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your customers? I think, I think you're one of the unique companies. You don't just sell retail to other companies. You also sell to, to other accessibility companies as well. Do you focus on a niche or a certain category? Like, who are your typical customers?
So a lot of so we do sell to other digital accessibility companies, and in that capacity, we can train them, let them use our platform, and they can, they find the tool to be much more efficient and quicker. In some cases, there are other companies we are their quote unquote. So if you have digital marketers, we're their accessibility team.
Right.
We become their team, and we white label our platform, so that it'll still match the color scheme. If you wanted to use us, we'd have your logo on everything, your color scheme, we match everything, and you would just introduce us as your accessibility. So you could use some of our testers and or developers in that capacity. And then, same thing with compliance companies. The way that we do it is we will, if they're working with a company from a compliance standpoint, we try to offer them, give them another product or whatever to sell, right? Which becomes the accessibility compliance of it. And again, however, if they have a developer, that they already use a third party, and we also work with all these companies, if they have their third party, their own developers, who do their remediation. We coach, we train, we offer training, coaching, consulting services, so that we can help these companies get better at it. The ultimate goal would be, when you build a website from scratch, you build it with accessibility in mind, right? Because it's, I can't remember the old statistic, but it's, if by the time something costs $1,000, when it finally reaches a consumer to fix, if you caught it upstream, it may cost 100. If you caught it development, it'll cost you $1, right? So it's the same thing, right? You want to catch from an expense standpoint, by the time it's already out there and it's affected people, that becomes a problem. I mean, and that's, the penalties to not be accessible, we haven't mentioned that yet, is, you can get a demand letter or you get sued. I mean, you're talking probably an easy $10,000 right there. Just somebody saying, I couldn't get on, I couldn't access it, I couldn't do the work, I couldn't reach this. And there are unscrupulous people out there, Eugene. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but there are some people out there that, they use a bank of people to go out and test. I mean, we had lawyers in New York that, because I'm in the Philadelphia area, that were testing all these Philadelphia restaurants, and just, we found out they were just suing them all because they weren't accessible.
Yeah.
And, and it's just one of those things that, so if you get a demand letter, if you get sued, that becomes that cost at that point, and your reputation also can be more damaging, right?
100%. Yeah, there are definitely opportunities out there with the
Yeah. So the idea would be to, from that perspective, is to do it as early and as possible, and and it's not a once and done thing. So you cannot just be poof, I'm accessible. I did the audit. Well, once you do the audit, that's one thing. Then you got to fix it.
And then you have to continue. Yeah.
And then you got to maintain it. So there's a whole lot of components to that, and ways to deter it, like having a accessibility. You have a blurb on your site, like a badge that tells people that you're accessible. Accessibility statement lets them know. And these are ways also to mitigate from a business perspective, to mitigate the potential of being sued.
Right. So this badge is sort of like a credential of some sort, right?
Yeah, and we offer VPATs, which are virtual. That just says people, yeah, you're accessible. And then we also offer the reports that people can have access to.
Okay. What are some of the common misconceptions about digital accessibility that you've had to address, in your time? Yeah.
The first is that there's a problem at all. I mean, when you think about it, as I said, 96% aren't accessible, but a lot of people just don't get it. And unless you know somebody who's had these issues or are affected by it, you may not be aware of it yourself.
Right.
But the other thing is that cost is that concern, because it's an unknown. And when people are, I don't want to say unaware, I was going to use the word ignorant, but if you're afraid of something, till you face it, you don't understand it. And so the idea of, oh my gosh, I just spent this much money on developing a website. Now what do I have to do? Now you want me to spend more money to do this? Right. And so the idea is, and that's why, again, our approach has been to try and make it much more palatable for people to fix it. And our system also, the other thing is, since it does have that project management tracking tool, we can document a journey of someone going from inaccessibility to significant conformance, right? Because it's never going to be 100%. It's called significant conformance. There's no real hard percentages out there. And the ADA laws are very squishy, to say the least, in the United States. I'm not sure what they are in Canada up there, but I know that they're, generally they're not that draconian, that people have a hard number that they go after. So, but our aspect of so if somebody does get sued, or somebody does get a demand, and you can show that journey, most judges will not even address, or they'll say, oh, they're working on it. They give you that. They give you, so once you get a problem identified and you start fixing it,
right?
You're given the grace to say, hey, and especially if an accessibility statement, which gives people the opportunity, gives you, the consumer, the opportunity to let the company know.
Right.
Once you let the company know and they can fix it for you, then they met their burden of, of correction. That, that's all you can ask. That's like in any, relationship between anybody, it's the give and take, even between consumer and retailer, or consumer and business owner.
That's an interesting point. That example you gave about showing the sort of the audit trail, the history of remediation that's happened when you get sued. Is that based on a real case? Is that?
Oh, that's that's we in the past, I mean, we really believe we will go and become a witness free of charge from our standpoint, not expenses, but charge. If you are a client and you've been a client and you get sued and you go into a website, you get into a lawsuit for your website, we'll go there to help show that, hey, this is what we've done. And again, you show the progression, you show that you're making a good faith effort. And, like anything, it's that revolving door, right? We attack and fix the biggest issues first, the ones that affect most people. You start, and then, the priority gets, as you fix and correct things, the priority gets, less and less, but at least you want to fix the most reoccurring.
From your experience, especially in your customer base, do they come to you after they get sued, or
we had, yes, a lot of times.
Are they more proactive? I mean, you talked about how much more expensive it is. Right?
Yeah, you get a lot of times we get hey, we've been sued. Can we hire you? Can you help us?
Right.
And so you get a mix of that. Yeah, sometimes it's funny because it may happen to people that we've tried to work with, and then they come back later and says, hey, guess what just happened? So, and that happens, but sometimes it's, and again, if the key thing to note there is for us is that if you've already been sued, then we do our best to get you set up again correctly and based upon your needs and your budgetary requirements, right? We'll work out that plan to help that entity get as accessible as quickly as possible, addressing the most grievous concerns, so that again you can show that you have if you're doing an ongoing audits, if you're doing monthly, we have a badge program that shows people that we audit them on a regular basis and let them know there's been changes in code and there's been problems, because that's the other thing with, depending on who your content developers are, with technology, you touch something here, something downstream breaks, or vice versa, right? So as that's happening, we can monitor and say, something happened here. We don't know what, but this here and in this page here, this is what we know. And again, the larger the site and the more you offer, and I'm not even getting into things like PDFs and digital content that may be on there. That becomes a whole other issue, and if depending on what your the business you're in and how you can, what you're responsible for in that area.
Okay. Yeah. You kind of mentioned overlays, and I'm bringing it back because I think one of the key, one of the key value propositions that they have is, it's cheap and it's easy, right? It's a fairly cost, and we talked about cost as well being a barrier to a lot of businesses, cheap. Right? Like it's for like $400 a year, you can have an overlay. And I believe there are also some free versions. I believe like UserWay, for example, has some free, has a free version of the overlay. I don't know what it does, but I know there's a free version. So how do you compete? How would you compete, or with something like that that's so cheap and so easy to install as well?
Well, it's some cases you can't, meaning that some ways they can't afford it, and or they don't want to make that investment. And, I, go with God and good luck with that, right? As always, they may be, the solution may be cheap, but you get what you pay for. And there's, I think you may know that there's some companies are suing their overlay companies right now because they've been sued. So overlay companies, we've been talking about it for years, but it seems most recently it's becoming much more wide known that they're not effective and they're not working. And we've actually had one client of ours actually had us test their site that had an overlay to prove to them, to prove to the overlay that that it didn't work. And and we identified the issues and had to go back, and he gave him a position point for his discussions to get things fixed that he wanted fixed.
Okay. So what's your advice to businesses that kind of find costs as an issue? Like if they,
well, I guess the first thing would be to first recognize that it's an issue. I think and let's just forget about because where I'm from, you always want to be a good corporate citizen, right? You want to be part of the community. And more so now than ever, DEI are huge initiatives, right? So the inclusivity factor is critical. And, if you're 20 to 25% of the population is not included, then you've got a problem. But, first of all, it's good business. Okay, it's just good business. From a market perspective, if you said, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to shut out 25%, 25% of my market. Well, you would question that if it was anything, right? You would just say, well, we don't want to do that. You don't want to shut out 25% of a particular market. And we're talking everybody now, right? I mean, so that means almost every business that's online, you could lose 25% of your potential client base or somebody you want to sell, whether it be shoes, sneakers, or snow cones, right? Whatever that may be. So, and then the other side of it is that, again, from a business perspective, I think it's 5 to 9 people may share with other customers, other friends, a positive experience, right? But I think it's 15 to 20 people will definitely share negative experience. So then on top of, from a business perspective, so if somebody's trying to get on your site and they can't, well, they're going to try, they may tell up to 20 people, this place, so-and-so doesn't work. So, and some people are very, they're loyal and brand committed, and they're also committed to their their friends or their family, right? Mm-hmm. So from a first, it's good business. Secondly, it is that if you're working with a reputable company, and which we feel we are, and our resellers, or our approach of let's figure out the most egregious problems, get them fixed, and let's consider this a journey. It's a journey. It's not an event, and that you approach it that way, you can get this solved, and then show by demonstrating with all the good things that we talked about, like an accessibility statement, by showing that if you do get questioned, you have documentation on it, and bringing, and us, it's depending on our role, bringing us in as somebody that can show them and demonstrate to them, the positive effects of what we're doing and what's good about it, and how it's, and again, you can keep the cost as manageable as possible, because that's the key. It's really a cost of doing business, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you're gonna deal with it. If you want to put it off, as long as you want to put it off, as long, then kind of like the hot water heater that's leaking a little bit here, and and the next thing you know, your basement's full of water. You either you fix it when you start working on getting it fixed then, or start saving to get it replaced. You just can't keep ignoring it, because at some point you're going to wind up, it could come back and bite you.
That's a good way. That's a good way to put it. I agree. Like the longer you wait, the worse the problem, the bigger the problem is, and the more expensive it's going to get.
Absolutely. Right. And again, like I said, and that's another one of our key areas right now, working with development companies, is trying to integrate and working with companies, development companies now, by using our tool or using us as a service to help make, at the inception of a website, make it accessible. Because once again,
Right.
it's cheaper. You're not fixing anything. You're building it the right way. And it's
Right.
a lot easier to build it than it is to go back and try and retrofit it, right?
Okay. I've got two more questions.
Shoot.
Kind of going back to the start. It's something you kind of mentioned the founding story of Accessibility Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And is the company and the person that sort of sparked the origin of Accessibility Shield? Are they your clients? Did they ended up using the tool that you built after that meeting? I'm just curious.
We worked with them for several years.
Okay.
And
So they were a
then,
client. Okay.
what was that?
So they did end up working. You did end up working.
They worked,
Yeah,
and then eventually, not related to, more so turnover on their part in different shifts. We wound up not, a relationship ended amicably,
Got it. Okay.
but it was
Okay.
one of those things that they were critical and part of our, we give them, we appreciate all that they showed us. And in some ways, I think since they were more of a manual audit and
Mhm.
our focus on the technology so much wasn't necessarily what they wanted to.
Got it. And then I think the other question that I think you were kind of getting at was, you had worked in Wawa for many, many years.
Yes.
And I do know a little bit about it. Well, obviously
Yeah.
it's mainly the Philadelphia area, right?
Right. Well,
I'm
yeah,
not sure if it's on.
it's in 6 states now. I'm not going to do a commercial,
Okay.
and they're growing. They're going
Right.
across the nation right now.
So how do you go from Wawa to Accessibility Shield? Yeah.
Well, again, I had many hats at Wawa. One of those, so back in 1991, 92, when George Bush signed the ADA laws,
Maybe. Yeah.
I was in HR. One of my jobs, believe it
Okay.
or not, one of my jobs was I helped write our job descriptions to help understand what the limits and the specifications are for. So it's been part of my focus, I guess, since that time, in terms of it's an awareness, and it's just something that I've always, and like I said, we as a good corporate citizen, always looked at the entirety of the community that we serve, not just the top or the people. It's about including everybody and trying to do what we could for everybody. So that's been part of my experience. And I would give my parents some credit too. I think they were good people. They instilled upon us to do what was right.
Right.
So yeah, I'm one of 11 kids, so
Oh wow, big family.
And I have 6 myself. So teaching and doing things right are something you want to espouse and live to, because at the end of the day, you got to look yourself in the mirror, right? It doesn't matter with other, people can live their lives whenever they want, but you got to be happy. And this has been a fulfilling adventure for me for the past few years, and I've learned so much about just the business and the different people, and just and the impact this can have.
Yeah, it's great, and thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Bob. Really appreciate it. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Right. So before we end, can you just tell our audience what's the best way to get in touch with you or in touch with your company? We'll have some of the links below. Yeah, but yeah.
accessibilityshield.com is we are on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Bob Moran. I would say sales at accessibilityshield.com is a way that's a generic mailbox. I'm B Moran at accessibilityshield.com if people want to, I mean, I would probably hand off many of those contacts just so people understand that. But the sales one is one, and and we also have some videos on YouTube that show our process and show what we do, so that people can have a better understanding of what is in our approach and who we are.
Very cool. And we'll add a link to that YouTube channel as well when this comes out. Sure.
Thank you.
So again, thank you very much, Bob, CEO of Accessibility Shield. It was great. It's a pleasure having you on our podcast.
Thank you, Eugene. Wonderful. Great job.